Peace and welcome to the Atlantis School for Gifted Youngsters. Thanks for watching and subscribing to our channel.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to come on with me. One of my brothers, Power God Allah, his stage name is Ali. He's one of the members of the Saint Lunatics that is down there in Missouri. He actually reshared something that you put on Instagram about COVID-19, the work that you were doing, where you're at. So that's the way that I actually came in tune with you. And I went and I checked out some of your other content, and I'm like,
what in the world? Yeah.
I never seen you. And I'm like, wow, she's conscious too. So it interests me because I have a few different platforms, and I always strive to highlight people who are part of the human family, who are doing the actual work that's necessary to bring some more beauty to this world and to help repair what's broken. So I could see that in some of the things that you were doing, just going through some of your content. And I was like, man, I got to reach out to her to see if she can come on so I could get a little bit more information, as well as share it with my audience in terms of your journey, because the work that you're doing is very, very, very important. I know that you already understand that. And it's important that others see people like yourself who are doing the actual work, so that they know that there is evidence to support the same type of internal claims that they may make, but they may not see the evidence of that type of work. So you're very inspiring in that kind of way, as well as
praises to Allah. Yeah.
So so to begin, I checked out one of your videos, and you were talking a little bit about your journey in terms of consciousness, and you were saying that type of environment that you grew up in, there wasn't much diversity, but it wasn't until you was about 20 years old, I think, that your mind just became open to this world outside of your social norms and the environment that you grew up in. So could you kind of share a little bit about your journey and how you came into consciousness? And before you share that journey, right, could you give me how you define consciousness? Like, what is the definition to you in terms of awareness, and in this modern day we say woke?
Yeah. I pondered that a bit when I read I thought, like, oh, my journey of consciousness, like that's a big thing. I can't say, I feel like I don't use those terms a lot, because I used to get hung up on that, and I spent a lot of time studying the devil, like studying all the conspiratorial aspects and all of the, because like when you say woke, it's like you wake from that there's a paradigm that we're being plugged into, that, we're playing in someone else's system that they put together. And so like you wake up from like, oh, no, I want to have like the conscious, willful act in how I want to live my life and what direction I want my life to go. I don't feel like I spend a lot of time on that. It was more just like really seeking the truth, right? Like, so it's more like a desire to know, the truth, and to have understanding of the times that we're living in. Cause it just, I feel like maybe, what it meant in times past is not, I don't know that there's a lot of agreement on what that means, as far as like you were talking about, like, does it translate into practical works? So I guess I was conscious of a lot of missteps and a lot of harm and things that were going in different directions. For me, it was food, so that I consciously wanted to decide that I wanted to do a measure of good in the other direction for what was going on. And it wasn't enough to just eat organic and like feed our family pure foods, but that like we had to go the next step and grow foods. I don't know if that's like a succinct enough answer to your question, but in all honesty, don't ponder like consciousness as a term as much. And maybe that's why I'm doing the work, is because I don't think about it so much. It just is like a state of being,
Yeah, absolutely. I was out in Vermillion, South Dakota, because I was speaking at the University of South Dakota, and Vermillion It's a very small town. I think the population is about 10,000. The median age of residents there is about 23 years old. Some of the students that I came in contact with that lived there, they shared somewhat of a common experience that you shared on one of your videos. You talked about growing up in a community where original people you really didn't come in contact with. It was maybe a handful of people that may have been around. And I met students who grew up in the same type of environment, and the first time that they came in contact with original people was when they were at a college. And one of the things that some of the students talked about in terms of advocacy, being allies for oppressed people as a part of this human family, is how they were essentially the pioneers in their family because they really didn't have any support in terms of maybe family members or people in their environment that they could look towards as somewhat of a standard when it comes to this journey of advocacy and being an ally. Is that a similar experience that you had in terms of when you became aware of different things? Who did you talk to, or who were you able to talk to that looked like you?
Yeah, well, I've been talking with a couple of people about this like whole social distancing thing, that like Allah socially distanced me like 20 years ago when I came out to this farm. Like I'm barely distanced from everybody where we live. It's like we live 20 miles out. Can't see now, since like in the past couple of years there's been some construction, but like you couldn't see another house from our house at all, not lights, nothing. You're just out here. And I feel like that was maybe what had to happen for my growth and maturity, because Allah being the best knower knew about my rebellious spirit, knew about the errors that I tend to make in my own personal approach to things and character. So it was like I was socially distanced from even my own people too. So it was like, because we live near a college town and everything's like really very politically correct. So like in the beginning, when I would try to build with people, they'd just be like, oh no, don't, Farrakhan, like, I don't want to hear about that, that, well, they're anti-Semitic, or they're this, they're that. And no, or although they hate white people. It's like, no, that's not my experience at all. And so I felt like maybe it's just me. Maybe I don't know how to communicate with people. Maybe I just need to retreat more. So I haven't really had very many successful conversations with Caucasian people, because they don't want to really stay on topic. You get a lot of the like, well, we weren't there and it wasn't me and this and that. And there was like a point, and I've also been blessed to have a lot of children, which takes up a lot of my time. There was a point where I tried to link with some of the older women who have come across a similar path as myself. So like I found out like what Dorothy Blake Fardan was doing, like her work with CURE and the Caucasians United for Reparations and Emancipation work. And then Ida Hakeem, and they both were, really felt like it was really important work, but that they had put a lot of their life force into like traveling and, advocating and going, and they weren't really getting anywhere. They just felt like, okay. So they encouraged me to write and to read and to like stick with it. But, that being on the farm and like developing and doing what we were doing, going after that knowledge, that too was also worthy work. Like I had confirmation of it might not be your path to be like very out there right now. Mm-hmm. And that's, that might just be, that's okay. Like keep doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't even feel like I've, gotten started with as far as like speaking to, so that's kind of the point of some of the content that you've come across of mine, of the God who educated me was finally like, you're not actually isolated, you have a phone in your hand. I thought, all right. Like, you mean I should make videos, like I should put stuff out there about this? He said, yeah, like it's not just lettuce that people want to see pictures of, or your soil, like people would want to hear about this. So then I started making videos. to kind of put it out there to like hedge in the conversation a little bit more because I just felt like every conversation got hijacked, that I ever tried to have.
Yes.
And then I would lose friends and or acquaintances. I don't know. It's hard to make friends when you're older and living far from town and not having repeated contact with people that you've known for any length of time, so it's like fairly easy to lose acquaintances over heated conversations.
Yeah.
But that was one thing that, has really always been something that like, I knew that this was a truth that I wasn't turning my back on. So if people chose to turn their back on me while I was learning how to communicate better, then that's just what needed to happen. Like it didn't change me as far as me just being like, I can't, I have to leave that alone. It actually made me like double up and like want to figure it out more to be able to communicate better because I didn't feel like anybody I ever came across that taught me had problems communicating. Like, even though it was hard to hear sometimes, or, I didn't understand it at the first listen or even the 10th listen to understand it, that I still felt like that I should know that, like it wasn't, I didn't want to hear it or I don't have a lot of like fuzzy feelings and stuff. Like I don't get easily offended, I guess. It's like, not one of those people that's like, oh, let's just, no, I want to know the truth and I want to hear the whole of it. And you don't have to soften it and you don't have to, make it sound any kind of way because you're not going to hurt my feelings. I mean, I think people were shocked when I first shared how it was, Dr. Khalid Muhammad, who I used to listen to for hours. Like I used to listen to frequently. Yeah. And I knew that, in the physical, if we ever came across each other, he wouldn't be necessarily like warmly receiving me or have a good word. And that was perfectly all right with me. That was like justified and perfectly fine in my mind,
Yeah.
I felt like.
Yeah, definitely.
He's doing his work and me starting on this journey of understanding is mine. And I don't expect, anybody to necessarily want to be my friend or want to be aligned with me in any kind of way. It's just, I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn from them, whoever it is,
Absolutely. So when you first got exposed to Islam, it was through learning about Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. And if it was him who exposed you to Islam, what were the circumstances? How did you even learn about him?
Yeah, so actually my first exposure to Islam was through my husband's friendship with some gods who they were the first, Black men that I had ever been in their home and been received in. And, like that was because I married young. My husband was much older than me. So that was my first exposure where I would go in their house and walk up the stairs and I would see the picture of the Last Supper with the black dreadlocks all around the table. Yeah. And then the picture of Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad on the wall with his name and like this little typeset that they had done on their little typewriter and cut and pasted on the frame. And then the next one of, of Master Fard Muhammad that said, this is the Mahdi of the Muslims, the Christ of the Christians, and the Messiah of the Jews. And I was pretty much like, I was raised in a Catholic family, but my family was recovering Catholics. So the first time I saw that, I remember, it was on the way up the stairs. And so that was the last picture at the top of the stairs. And I thought like, wow, they really know what they're grounded in. Like I had never had such a bold come across somebody that just so boldly, had a declaration of that. So that was my first experience, was just their hospitality and their kindness to me, even though they knew that I had never been, in a situation like that before. I was always real quiet. I think it took me like a year to really even open my mouth during those visits. I would just listen. And we had the commonality of food, because I was really into like eating healthy, whole foods and fasting and this and that. So I definitely, that was my first exposure. So, but they never talked about it. It was just their life as an example.
And then, so pardon me, are you saying that these brothers were 5%ers?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were 5%ers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, yeah. there was at the time there were two brothers, and like in, you know, blood brothers as well. And so, yeah, they would, you know, we would go visit them and see, and so I would just, you know, kind of sit there and take it all in. And so it wasn't until after, so we had a friend that used to give us different like conspiracy videos, you know, here, watch this, you know, that kind of thing. So one night before like a bad snowstorm in, I think it was like February, he gave us this DVD and was like, oh, you have to see this, you know, this DVD, it's called Black Hitler. You got to see this man. He's like, watch this debate, you know. So I thought, all right. I just had a child, my first child. She was like 6 months old. I put her to bed, and you know, this was long before, you know, Netflix and we didn't have cable, we didn't have anything. So I was always, anything that was in the house, I would consume it if it was, you know, of a certain level. So I thought, all right, I'll just pop this in the VHS, you know, it's an actual VHS tape, and put this in and listen to it. And it was a debate between Anthony Hilder, who is still, you know who he is, he's like still doing his thing, and Dr. Khalid Muhammad, and it was edited by Hilder, so it was a shortened version of the actual debate, and it was edited very unfavorably towards Dr. Khalid. It was like very harsh, you know, like just the most heated, worked up clips all put together, you know, basically like the takeaway, if you were really shocked and not able to hear anything else, was just, you know, like round them up and kill them all. Like that was basically like the takeaway. But it was really specific what he was speaking about. He wasn't speaking about all white people. He was speaking about a certain, you know, specific situation. So, but I still was like, wow, I've never heard anybody talk like this. So then the next time I saw the gods, I said, you know, I saw this video, you know, and he said, oh, really? Yeah, I saw that. That was a long debate. I said, really? Because it was only like an hour. And he said, oh, no, I have the full debate. Like, I'll give you that. You can watch that. So then once I got the full debate and then I watched it, then I haven't stopped asking questions since then, you know, because I thought it gave a lot more background. It was really favorable. It showed how, you know, how he built his arguments and how he was able to really take down pretty much anything that Hilder dished out. He was able to, you know, just cut down with facts and to, you know, to be the winner of that debate. So then after that, then, you know, then he gave me more materials and I would always come back and study them. And, you know, I wish that there was some kind of blueprint for Caucasians who are questioning or who are seeking and wanting to study the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, because it wasn't, I mean, now there's so much more like at your fingertips, there's so much content, there's so many things that you can come across. But, yeah, back then in 1998, there wasn't a lot of things to use and study. So I still have a bunch of the materials, you know, like the original. I don't have any way to play them. I don't have a VHS player anymore, or like a tape player, but I have them, you know. So
yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So then from there, checking out some of the videos, did you start getting into some of the literature by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and then other different literature that kind of gave you deeper insight into some of the things that he was building about?
Yeah, I did. I have, you know, I have many, not all of the books, but I have many of the books. Like I have Theology of Time and Our Savior Has Arrived, Message to the Black Man, True History of Jesus, a couple other, the Masons book, that was a big one. I mean, very small book, but big baby content. So I have some of those books. And then also it was always kind of like this, you know, this like push and pull kind of thing of that was around the time that, you know, I had young children. So my family was around a lot, and I'd stay up late reading and often just be so tired that I wouldn't put my materials to on the shelf. And then my mother, who was visiting, would get up and look at and just be so offended by the language in the books, you know. And so it's always this push and pull kind of message of like, Courtney, why don't you just leave that alone? Like, that's obviously not for you. Why would you spend your time reading books about, you know, somebody who is saying that the white man is the devil? And, you know, what, you know, like, why would you spend time? And I couldn't necessarily articulate it. And now recently, right before I got, your invite for tonight, I was thinking just about the power of content to, to bond people to someone's heart and their mission and their, their concern for uplifting humanity. And I was really bonded to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad through his material. They were just so genuine. I felt like I had like a really old VHS. It was super grainy of the history of the Nation of Islam. I think it was like from 1978. But just seeing those images, like of where he grew up, his houses, the roads they used to walk, the fields that they used to work, and I just felt like this. So even though I didn't understand it, I definitely bear witness that he is who he says he is, and he was taught by who he says he was taught by, and it all just made so much sense, and such a confirmation of that how my family and like the world really wants you to cling to this old body of knowledge to solve these problems that we're all facing. But it has to be this new knowledge that's coming in. It has to be something that I don't think people believe. Like I think that they read in the stories and they want some like dramatic, clouds opening up, God coming down on the sky, like they want all of that. So for it to be as for it to be a real-time blessing in our own physical bodies, that it can be that he appeared to us in the form of a man, and that he taught the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, like it's almost, it brings up these discrepancies of like, well, do you have faith? Do you believe in all these things? And I guess because I didn't have any faith, like I was a clean slate. I had a deep desire to be taught. I really wanted to know the truth. I had a longing, but all of the stuff, especially in the Catholic Church, it just didn't really, it seemed like a big theatrical show. And I knew how empty I felt from being around that. And I knew how it must have left my parents, because they never actually talked to me about God. It was like, we would just go, to church on Christmas and Easter and do all the things, but it didn't have any substance or like meaning to that they wanted to talk to me about it. It wasn't like this thing to pass along. So yeah, I was very early on, like, so even though I felt like in this long journey have had a lot of places where I've stumbled and fallen and not, done my best in many areas, I haven't ever doubted, so I think what I'm coming into a maturity of that it is true for me also, of like really grasping that, that there is a significance to me being on this path. Like for me, like that there is a value. I think I really had to kind of turn a corner with internalizing a lot of that. Cause I think also too, why hearing Dr. Khalid Muhammad speak like that resonated with me, because I didn't ever feel like a good person. Like I wasn't a particularly kind child. I was a very spoiled only child. So like I had a lot of character flaws, and I had a lot of things that I felt like he was the first one to ever just kind of like sit me down and not talk to me personally, but to just really explain, like, this is why, like, you specifically and your people are like this. And then it's taken me a 20-year journey of trying to, cleaving to that truth and cleaving to that, and then trying to, make a way forward for where I'm honoring that truth, and then also doing a measure of good in my own life and works, and, to give honor to that. Because part of why I've kept my mouth shut is because I didn't want to taint the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Like, I didn't want people to be like, well, if you're one of his white followers, like, we don't want to, why would we be interested in that? Because I didn't really have a lot of guidance. Like, that's one of the things that I, think about a lot. It's like, that's to have some kind of organized outline or like guidance or something, because there wasn't, for me, there wasn't a lot of consistency, and maybe that was just what needed to pass, for my development. But we all want a quick and easy, rise on the uphill road. We all want it, but it's not, that's not the case.
So I would definitely say, as a pioneer, and you taking this uncharted course or this uncharted territory, you're paving the way for many others today and others that will come behind you, because like you said, it wasn't like there was some manual or some structure of this is what it means to have knowledge of self in this particular form, and to be responsible in terms of owning what this is, for being able to educate and enlighten my own people. You know, you're really creating what that would actually look like for others today, and then those that will come behind you. In addition to your studies, have you ever gotten into the study of the Supreme Wisdom book or the lessons or anything?
No, well, I mean, I've seen it, I've read through it. I didn't, I was definitely very sleep deprived in the moments that I had the most access to it, like in the physical visiting and flipping through pages and things. And, but yeah, I never memorized my 120. I never did that. Cause I guess we went kind of back and forth, and they just were like, you can do this, but I don't think it's going to satisfy like what your particular longing is, because it isn't for you. Like this is for us, and we'll give it to you if you want to do this. But I didn't really have a lifestyle that allowed for me coming into that. And, now there's teaching online, there's this and that, but back in those days when I was really most, trying to make sense of feeling like, that maybe that would be what I was, an answer to what I was seeking, that it seemed kind of obvious to all of us of like, actually, no, like this isn't going to be the thing. So,
yeah. I would say too, that's one of the things that resonated with me with learning about the 5%, is that it differs from the Muslim religion in a sense where our culture is based upon teaching civilization to all the human families of the planet Earth. And that was one of various different disagreements that the Father, Allah, had with the Nation of Islam, and why he essentially left and began to focus on teaching youth within the streets of Harlem. One of the other things is Azrael was one of the first, or he was the first Caucasian that was taught by Allah the Father. And that is something that is very common. So, when you mention that the gods welcomed you and stuff, that's something that's very common amongst us as the 5%. We don't have like that notion that we're pro-black or we're anti-white or anything like that. But at the same time, we also recognize that this society is definitely pro-white and anti-black and brown and anti-women and anti any group that would be considered a minority segment of our population. But in addition to that, one of the things you mentioned is you got into farming. Is that something that you begin to become more aware of in terms of your purpose simultaneously with you coming into Islam? Or is that something that was a seed that was planted way before that just became more self-actualized?
Well, my husband is the one that has always been into like, roots and culture, into agriculture. He's like the main, farmer, and I'm more in the house with the children cultivating, that field. But no, we help in things. But, so I feel like it kept me on the path because there's just been a lot of like formative struggle and suffering and whatnot. And so it kept me focused on it. It allowed for there not to be much distraction. There's a lot of time out here to just keep like ruminating on things and thinking over things. And, so it's definitely, helped me to understand. I just think I'm a quick learner and like observer of things, but I'm also, slow to come to certain realizations and things. And so I think it was a big part of, just like how water smooths down rock, like after a passage of time, that like me being out here on the farm, that time frame was really needed for my development. And, and also just that it felt like, it did give us an isolation from a lot of our culture. Like it allowed, Caucasian culture, it allowed us to, to raise our family free from a lot of the influences of, you know, of the dominant Caucasian paradigm, and just, you know, was what we felt like was the measure of good that we eventually, like, it would come into meaning. And I was just having this conversation the other day about how, you know, we used to have a farm stay on our farm, like a bed and breakfast where people would come and stay, and just how grueling it was to be in hospitality, and how much more understanding it gave for, you know, for me to relate and understand what people who work in the hospitality industry are going through. Because we definitely had some situations with our family when I was working full time, even though I was a quarter mile down the road, and my husband was out in the field and at the market running, you know, that like one of our children really did slip through the cracks in our life as far as like getting what she needed to be nurtured, to have her needs met, to be her, you know, at her best potential. And just having to kind of come to terms with that, like, as difficult as that is to, you know, to accept and to take responsibility for, that it just gives me a lot more compassion and understanding for how like wide that ripple of effect of, you know, just the way everything is set up, of how, even though I was like literally within, you know, quarter mile, that it's still just that, you know, that lack of being able to be connected to one's, you know, family, and like really at the same time trying to struggle to like make ends meet and stuff. I don't think it was a understanding that I would have gotten, you know, just by acting like I was woke or conscious, or that like I really got it, you know, that I understood what it was like to be growing food and yet be to a certain degree food insecure, you know, because we don't only eat our own food. So like there was a period of time where we're growing food for people in the upper income of our area that we live in, but yet we're still like the poor struggling farmers with holes in our socks and shoes, and not being able to like keep up with everything. And I definitely didn't have an understanding of the depth of certain struggles that people go through. And I don't think it was, you know, something I ever would have been able to grasp fully, which I don't even think I do, but I have, you know, a limited understanding now on a much deeper heart level than I ever would have if we didn't have to go through that like severe circumstances of, you know, of our own choosing. But, and then we're just so damn stubborn that we're not going to give up the farm, and we're not going to leave, and we're not going to, you know, throw it in, because it's like 20 years and we're finally like getting in a place where like it's established and things are going in a decent enough direction that we feel like we're going to be okay. But yeah.
Now, in the area that you're in, are CSAs, are those pretty common out there?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that do really well with those. And pardon me, let me know if the sound is terrible. My battery is getting low, so I'm just.
I can hear you.
So I don't lose you here. All right. Yeah, that's just a model that my husband hasn't really ever been comfortable with, because it's such a like a gamble kind of thing. So we've done like bits and pieces of that, but yeah. So we finally we're not going to do that. I don't know what we're going to do this year now that nobody can congregate and like go to market and stuff. So yeah, we have to reinvent that. But yeah, so all the, you know, starting a property that doesn't really have that much value, and like having to build it up into something that has value and all of that. So it also just really gave me a lot of newfound like value towards the book, you know, How to Eat to Live, and how that's really not only a recommendation for how to, especially in times like these, like how to just, you know, to cover yourself as far as meeting your nutritional needs, but then to also supercharge your immune system, but that it's also kind of a blueprint for a sustainable farm. Like if you understand it when you're reading it and you draft it out. And I definitely didn't understand that, you know, the first dozen times I read it, I didn't see that blueprint emerging as how it's like the, you know, the engine of like it's a big part of the economic engine of a nation, community. And while I might not ever be part of that, like to have that, you know, to hold that in high esteem, like as we're doing what we're doing, whether we're not connected to too much of a larger vision at this time, but to just like to know that when I'm walking around outside, to just be meditating on that and thinking about that vision that was shared and forward, that to just start there.
Yeah.
That's where
Yeah.
we're.
I think too, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wrote those books, you can definitely read that there was insight that he gained based upon living through that Great Depression, where you had suit lines in the 1930s, where one of the reasons he taught men in particular to eat one meal a day is so that your wife would be able to eat two and your children would have access to 3 meals a day. But those type of sacrifices was something that was definitely common during that time of the Great Depression. And I think even more so when we consider the kind of circumstances that we're living in right now, the value of those words are timeless. One of the videos that I saw that you shared, I think you were visiting a neighbor or something that was dealing with some type of health condition and related to the COVID-19. So tell me a little bit more about what you were actually doing.
Yeah, so I have like a lot of homeopathic remedies on hand, and so often what happens with homeopathy is that you do your searching, you check all these different things, and you finally fall upon the right remedy, and then you can't get it. And then in her situation, like that's on a normal day is like you find that you don't have it in your stash, and that a store around you doesn't have it either, and then you have to wait. Even the best places, if they ship by noon, like you're still looking at like 2-3 days, 5 days sometimes before you get the right remedy. So in their situation specifically, before I was into farming, I was a seamstress like many years ago. I used to have so that like back in the day when I first heard the teachings, I was a seamstress. And so this particular woman, she's not somebody that I'm super close with, but she's always been like a really supportive person, very positive. And so I remembered her like driving to my house to buy clothes. And so I thought like, well, we always have this dynamic in our, in our relationship where like, we'll go out of our way, to help the other one out. And so she told me that she was quarantined to the house and they had a test that wasn't back yet, but she was feeling really sick. And so I was able to, like people are, so for study group, people sometimes will, ask me about like, what do I do for like a planter's wart, or what do I do for like this, black and blue, or like stuff like that, like before COVID-19. Just recommending homeopathy for this or that felt like a much, more concrete path. Like it was pretty straightforward. And then now, because the symptoms are kind of all over the board, I've been saying to people, like, I found out about this resource that's free. It's a free homeopathic clinic, homeopathyhelpnow.com, where you can actually talk to some of the best homeopaths in the world who deal with epidemics and have them take your case. And so I'm more like switching right now to helping people find the remedies that are recommended rather than me doing the whole thing. Because I just, there's not a huge margin of error. People are really, in harm's way in some of these things. And so what might seem like, just a normal sore throat may not be. So she followed my advice, and even though she was not like clear-headed and she really didn't have a lot of energy, she did call them and they told her what to take. And then she texted back and said, like, do you have it? Or they had instructed her, like, ask your friend if she has it. So I did have it. And it was one of the first remedies that I ever really talked about online. I shared it in the Riza Islam challenge that he had a couple years ago. It's good for many different things, but in this case, it's good for some of the symptoms of COVID-19, depending on what I didn't take her case, so I don't know all of what was going on. But so yeah, I drove it out to her farm first thing in the morning and like left it far from her house, but on her property, and and then drove home. So yeah, it was. When you said in your invite where you mentioned about purpose, I feel like that's something that I'm really coming into, is just really feeling like homeopathy and how it's connected to health and farming and holistic health, that's really emerging as a way that I can serve, and where I feel like my purpose is really aligned and coming together. So I've just been following that path. Yeah.
That's peace. One of the things in my journey that I had to come to terms with is really owning and accepting the things that I've started to see in terms of the impact on the lives of different people that I've been in contact with. Have you gotten to that point where you've taken ownership to say, I know, instead of kind of being like a little laid back, like, I don't really know yet. I'm not sure, but to really step up and say, I own what people see that I'm doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely been a conversation I've been having with myself the last couple of weeks, because I feel like, as much as the homeopathy might be what I'm really feeling led, that like I should probably balance out some of the videos that I'm putting out and still keep talking about the teachings, because I feel like, just bringing one side of myself and not sharing like what keeps that like tenacity going is kind of getting things out of balance. And that I was saying, is it just that I'm like holding back? Am I making excuses? Like, maybe people don't want to hear that or this or that. And I don't necessarily care what people think, because that's one of the blessings of my personality, is that like I haven't really ever cared what people think, which is why so I would say no. I probably haven't been, I go through phases, I think. I think it's definitely me having to just really be more disciplined and grow as a person. I just, like many people, got overwhelmed by stress and I've told myself that I have to stop talking if I'm not keeping up with like prayer and study and really doing that. So that was how the sliding back from talking and ownership started. And now I just feel like I haven't put it out. So that's why I accepted your call, your invite for the call, because I thought like, all right, I need to just like loosen the knot in my tongue and stop going back into this place where like I don't want to own talking about. It's not that I don't want to, it's that or just feeling like, is it relevant to anybody? Like, does anybody care? Because that was something that I heard a lot, from people, like, I don't think anyone cares about a white woman talking about the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, or like what it means. And for a while I was like, maybe not, but it seems like other people might want to know,
Well,
like,
I think everybody wants to see a unicorn.
Yeah.
But I think that the path itself is gonna continue to push you. It's kind of like, as a writer, I may start off writing something, but eventually it starts writing me. I'm sure, as well as you dealing with the homeopathic science, that you may have some ideas about something that you want to do, and then you also get inspired to do something, and it's like this intuitive drive that it's not based upon what you choose to do. It's almost like you can feel that you're a conduit of that source or that consciousness. Where maybe before you might have thought like, okay, I'm making the decisions to do this, but like the woman that you just mentioned, that circumstance happened and it's showing you like this is more of the confirmation of the path that you've already been walking down. And that's the reason why I asked you that question, because I've had struggles with that as well, because in one sense it requires some degree of self-importance, because it is something that is a part of what you actually do. And because it is a part of something that you actually do, there is a business card consciousness that naturally comes along with it. You're going to have to talk about it and promote it. But it's difficult to balance it in terms of ego, because some people are doing things from the perspective of ego. It's not really coming from the heart. But yet you also have to utilize your platform to share some of your thoughts and your ideas, but in a sense of humility at the exact same time. I've always struggled with that, and one of the other things is there's a lot of things that I just simply do. I may not charge people money for this, or
Oh,
it's not
yeah, yeah.
anything that's transactional, you know.
Mhm.
And I've had to learn to figure out effective ways to monetize some of the things that I do,
Mhm.
without undermining the integrity of what it actually is. You know,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's one reason why certain people who are walking the righteous paths, they especially if you're talking about like indigenous society or some of the ancient days, people really didn't carry money or they had pockets. You
Mhm.
know, it was their presence that they used in order to barter, and things were
Mhm.
actually taken care of for them because it's simply the type of work that they were doing. It's kind of
Mhm.
challenging a lot of times to be able to find that balance in this kind of capitalistic society,
Mhm.
you know, but it
Yeah.
does definitely come with a sense of ownership,
Mhm.
you know, because even if we don't want to acknowledge and are kind of like, I don't really know, people see who you are and they see what you're doing. And that's
Uh-huh.
confirmation, you
Mhm.
know? So it comes to the point where you have to, you know, just really genuinely accept that,
Mhm.
you know? And
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you bring up writing. I know you said that you're a writer, but I enjoy writing, and I have tons of things that I've never finished, like, cause I always felt like, especially like Dorothy Blake Fardan, like she's still teaching to this day at Bowie State University, on social justice issues and really educating people. And she's in her mid 80s, and so I always felt like I really should be writing and doing this. And then, so partly what's coming up for me is I felt like this morning, so I have a bunch of children's books drafted, mainly because I wanted to make them for my own children. Because this is one of the things that came up for me a lot, was that it was really difficult for me to translate what I was learning to my children, because they, they heard all the thing, not every single hour of everything I was listening to, but they heard a lot of it. And that was another place that I really feel like I would have liked to just have materials that I could say, oh, here, just read this book, because we have a lot of, books that we do enjoy. And so that was something that came to me this morning, and I thought, like, well, maybe it isn't that I'm, that I'm slowing down on making content. Maybe it's that, like, right now, the slowdown period is just because maybe I'm supposed to be working on those old sketches, of just breaking it down to the most simplistic, childlike beauty of the stories, and just thinking about how so many people, whether you're religious or not, know the Bible stories, know the different, know the different, like, social references and things that can be made. So that maybe that's something that I need to break it down. Or I've even had thoughts of, like, because Caucasians argue with stuff all the time, just because that's like what they, rather than even hearing you, that's just what they do. That's the mode that they go into. That I'm like, what if I wrote about all this, like, in a fiction kind of way, and then at the very end was like, and this isn't a fictional story, like, this is real, like, like, maybe I'm just approaching it all wrong. Because I don't know.
Yeah,
But those are just a glimpse of, like, what runs around, because now, my children all have a lot more free time to
yeah.
do my things, because it's like, can you draw me what the streets look like in the 1930s in Detroit, like, can you make me a cityscape, can you do this, because we always did a lot of, like, storytelling and puppet things. And I guess that was one of the things that Equality used to say to me all the time, was just, like, truth out of season will never be successful. And so I just feel like that I can see the season for the different ideas that I've had, and the confusion kind of fading away, the being committed in a different way, the acceptance emerging, and that, it's coming into the season where it's time to bring it all to fruition a little bit more seriously than I have been able to in the past, follow
Yeah.
through on things. And
Yeah, I would definitely say that right now is a global reset where there's going to be a renaissance. It is not going to be what we consider to have been normal anymore, because a lot
no,
of things are being revealed and exposed for what it actually is, right? And
Mm-hmm.
with that reset button and that renaissance, arts and culture is going to emerge out of this place. And it's important, I think, to be at the forefront or be the ambassadors of controlling the narrative of what is actually going to be expressed. So
Mm-hmm.
the same way people are kind of stockpiling food, I think this is also a time to be able to hone your craft and to work on things that once this passes and all of the dust settles, that we will be the type of people who are bringing in the things that we've seen, things that we're seeing right now. A lot of us have seen years ago,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of seeing the deconstruction of this society and the emergence of a new world or a hereafter, so to speak. So a lot of us have been prepared for this for a long time. And I think it's also important to make sure that we're in the proper position and place. Just like some of the things that you're doing in terms of the homeopathy, there's going to be more people who are now more open-minded to that as what was considered to be an alternative before, but this as something from classical civilizations to indigenous
Right.
society
Yeah.
has always been the type of way that we addressed any kind of sickness and bringing healing to our human family. And I think people are now a lot more open-minded about that under the circumstances. They're thinking and considering things that all of the time before that, they had all of these distractions. I saw on one of these sports networks, because there's no sports going on right now, they were broadcasting a video game, basketball game, a simulated video
Really?
basketball game for entertainment.
Yeah.
And obviously people were watching it, you know? And it's
Really? I was going to say people be turning that off. No, okay.
yeah, people watching stuff like that. And it's like, now that people don't have these distractions, how do you assess life now, and how do you assess your purpose in that life? You know, so for a lot of people, they're going stir crazy right now, because now they have to really sit with themselves, and that's something that they may have not have ever done in their life.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So for many of us, this is an environment that we thrive in. And we can utilize as an asset to be the ambassadors of this new world that's going to reemerge from all of the things that we're seeing right now. That's one of the things that, like I said, I identified in you because my brother shared your stuff on Instagram, and I'm like, she's like-minded. We have to align ourselves with the human family that's going to bring about this change, you know?
Yeah. It's, you know, it's not one of those that, like, I never doubted that it would happen. I guess I was just always wondering, like, if it was going to be in our lifetime, you know, like if we would get to bear witness to it and stuff. And also just with the emergence of, you know, what's going on with the COVID-19 and the response and the healthcare, it's like the people that are so much more at risk are the people who've had the most to do and the most interaction with the medical system. And like they're in the weakened, you know, in a weakened state. And yeah, it's just a lot to unpack. But like Minister Ishmael Muhammad said, that, you know, Mother Tainada Muhammad would have loved the name COVID-19, and that there's so much in the number 19 to unpack, and, you know, all of that. So I'm getting to this point where I have to kind of pivot, you know, like where I feel like I've identified some resources and some like hopeful things to focus on. And then, yeah, maybe it's time to pivot and not give so much attention to this, you know, this pathogen kind of thing. I, you know, like I myself, I'm not scared. I'm not acting recklessly, but I'm not scared. I haven't been ever like somebody that just, you know, brazenly acts stupid around like sickness and stuff, but that there is, you know, that there is hope and there is things that you can do. So it's definitely a good time to be in the solutions paradigm.
Yeah, definitely.
Of bringing things forward.
So in terms of your platforms that you have online, where is the best place for people to get in contact with you to see a lot of the things that you've been doing and keeping up with what you're doing?
I do the most on Instagram.
Okay.
And then from my Instagram bio, like it goes to the farm's website, and then I have like a crash course about natural remedies on there. And then I send out stuff to that email list that like I don't have on anywhere else online, because a lot of what I put out there doesn't exactly align with everybody that's involved in the farm. Like, so that's why I do like the Farmer Courtney thing on Instagram as like that this is me, and you know the views expressed here are solely mine. I take responsibility for them. So like the email list and the things that I put out, I don't have a blog where I put all of that stuff out, and so yeah, that's like a little inside. You know, like when people read the emails and send, like I encourage people to reply and ask me questions and stuff, and so that's one spot. I do put things on YouTube, and it's like if there were multiples of me and I could just get everything done at the same time, but I have to just keep reminding myself, like I'm still teaching math and reading and science, and like we already were doing the homeschooling before all of this, and now all of their programs, everything is over. So it's just a lot more going on. So like I don't keep up like I do in my mind, my creative mind, my like notepads full of everything. It doesn't all go out online, but what I'm able to do, it goes on Instagram.
Okay.
Usually.
What's your Instagram handle?
It's Farmer Courtney, at Farmer Courtney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And I also create like animation, so I'm gonna send you like a link to some of my animation, because that could be something that you might want to use for like your homeschooling, because I've also figured out a way to break down some certain concepts in a way that is more fun and entertaining. And I'll make sure that I send you the link so that you can check some of it out, just in case.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I know my son is sick to death of hearing about me. He's like, he would love to learn from somebody else. Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm really, really holding the most hope for, and is all the new educational paradigms that are going to emerge from this, of just like how everyone realizing that for the people that it is such a break and a pause from really realizing how non-essential so much of that stuff is, and how to really get down to the heart of what the actual things that we most need to focus on to further a complete paradigm shift from what's going on now. And so yeah, so that'll be the first thing. I'm glad to know that. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out, because I haven't really tapped into what actually works super well for us. I feel like we just keep trying to piece things together. So yeah.
What age are your children?
So I have twin 9-year-olds, and then I have a 12-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter. I also have an 18-year-old daughter and a 22-year-old daughter, but they're not at home anymore.
Okay.
So
yeah. They're young adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I teach in elementary school, so the elementary school that I was teaching at before all of this, 32% of the students there have learning disabilities. So we have a co-teaching model program at the school where I offer support for the students that need the most assistance in 3 different classrooms. So I work in a 2nd grade class, a 4th grade class, and a 6th grade class, and I have my own students in each class.
Oh, nice.
Additionally, I have an after-school program for 9 to 12-year-olds. And then my Boys Allies Rites of Passage program that I do is at a middle school, and it's for boys between 13 and 15 years old. So part of my passion and my purpose is youth. That is what I do. So a lot of the things that I do, a lot of the content, my animation, a lot of the books that I write or my articles, I also do online courses that I have that's self-paced that people can take in terms of youth advocacy. If it's anything related to adults or parents, it's primarily to equip them with the skills and the tools to be able to reach the younger generation.
Okay.
Right? And if it's something that actually just the last week, I started to create animation around story time. So I
Okay.
do a couple of those
Yeah, that'd be,
animations as well. And it's just reading different books, and I put it in the form of my animation, just to give people, children, access to some of these things, and it's a little bit more engaging as well. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna send it to you so you can check it out.
Yeah,
But,
I appreciate that.
yeah, but
Okay.
you know, I thank you for your time, and I'm definitely gonna stay in contact with you.
All right.
Um,
Yeah, same to you. Thank
I'm
you.
gonna make sure that I keep up with all of the things you're doing, and then willfully we can do something like this again sometime in the future, just to check back in with each other to see what we're actually doing. Because like I said, it's important that you make sure, especially in times like this, that you're aligning yourselves with people who have like minds, who are really invested in help
Mhm.
bring some more beauty to this world and help repair the things that we see that are broken. And
Mhm.
I recognize that in you. I have a whole bunch of other people who are connected to me, and I wanted to give them also the opportunity to see who you are and some of the things that you're doing, so that we can create more of this type of human family that this world needs to actually see.
Mhm. Yeah.